So you started out, you found a writer, you hassled all your friends and family to get on your email list. Now, I've heard from another video you said that one of your greatest ways to build your list, that you built your list, is just by doing sort of joint ventureships that benefit both companies, you and the other company, where you mail for each other or you do promo for them, whatever. But there's a gap that I want to ask you about in there between hassling your friends and family to get subscribers and going out and getting joint ventures. How did your email list grow in between there?
That's a good question. Those were like the dark days,
yes,
where like we'd come in some days and find that the list had grown by like 2 people,
yes,
after like a team of us had like slaved away on creating content and like working all day. But you know, I think that we really stayed slavish about creating great content and about trying to use different mechanisms to get our users to pass along the content. So I mean, we did just a really good job of, you know, constantly changing the template, moving buttons around, messaging the audience in various ways. I remember we used to do like silly stuff, like one day we'd write about a really cool new place and we'd like manually go in and like cross off the tell friends button and like things like that.
Cool.
So that like, you know, like try and like get people to think that they're not supposed to tell people and maybe they would tell people more. I mean, it was really not particularly advanced techniques of list growth, to say the least, but we did anything we could to get people to tell other people, and we found ways to activate the audience by, I mean, again, it was really just comes back to quality though. I mean, we always grew organically and naturally because the content lent itself to being forwarded.
Yeah, makes sense. So you didn't advertise at all. You didn't do anything like that.
We had no money to advertise.
Yeah,
that was like, and even when we raised money, the stipulation was no advertising. Like, you know, this was for the first few years of the business. We didn't raise enough that we were able to go out and buy market share. We couldn't buy an audience. You had to build an audience by creating great content.
Yeah. I
mean, it's like the same thing. It's our investors drilled that into our heads, and we really like drank that Kool-Aid and believe it. Like, believe it 100%.
That's awesome. So in the emails it says tell a friend. What else did you do to facilitate that viral spreading of your awesome content?
Well, look, I mean, we did do some partnerships early on where we found some small audiences. When we were small, we found other small publications that were willing to do barters with us. They educate their audience, we educate our audience. We had, you know, we did a bunch of that. We did a bunch of events. We did offline events where people would come to the events and we'd capture subscribers by people signing up for access, like when they were out with us.
Mm.
You know, we did stuff that I don't actually think worked particularly well, but we at the time thought that it did, with, you know, putting stickers into every taxi we got in and on the subway and stuff like that. I mean, we did, you know, every sort of guerrilla tactic that was not executed particularly well.
But you tried it, and that's all that matters, right? You figure out what works.
We tried everything, and over time we found that, yeah, that partnerships were really one of the most efficient areas of growth, and that's something that we still focus a lot of time on.
Yeah, makes sense. So you talk about guerrilla tactics. And one of the things I noticed about you guys is that it's a publishing model. And I in my world, like the teaching people how to start internet businesses, it's more of a direct marketing model. And the two seem very different. Direct marketers believe in full text emails, no graphics or anything. You guys are more an advertising-based model. Why did you choose to do the publisher advertising model versus the direct marketing model?
For us, it was, I don't think we ever sort of considered other options. We were kids, and we said, okay, let's create content that's cool. And we had Daily Candy as somebody who had been in the market for women, and they had built an advertising publisher model. And we said, well, you know, every time we had sort of a hard decision, we looked at, you know, them being sort of the godfather of the space and said, okay, well, this is how they did it. And if it felt right to us, that if what they were doing felt like it was something that worked for us as consumers, we would, you know, sort of work off of the model that they had created. And so that was, in the early days, the inspiration. And our investors, we raised money from the same guys who had funded them. And so we had a real understanding of how they had built their business and what the mechanisms for success were. And so we stayed for the first few years very focused on sort of developing the model the same way that they did.
I've heard that that's the way to build a business up to success. I hear that over and over again, is focus. Just focus on your model, stick to it, that's it. So what was the platform that you used for sending out the emails when you started? Because now you have multiple cities, it's a custom platform. What did you start out with?
We started out with the early, you know, I think we used Constant Contact for a very little while in the beginning. Then we moved on to a company called Silverpop, which is sort of more of an enterprise software provider where, I mean, it was a real solution, but it got really expensive because we were paying per email that we mailed to each day. And as the volume of the email list grew, it got cost prohibitive for us. And so eventually we went out and built our own.
Yeah, because I haven't found that functionality anywhere online, and any of the constant contacts are Awebbers. So thank you for sharing that.
Some new people coming up in the space who I think are doing interesting things. Yeah. And I think that finally we're going to start to see some companies come out with technology that actually allows people to sort of start email businesses with less internal tech infrastructure.
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome. So now you're at the point where you're doing over $10 million this year. You just passed the 2 million subscriber mark. Looking back, do you have any advice as to what you do differently for those people that are starting out?
It's tough. I mean, from doing differently, I think the thing that the best piece of advice I give is the best piece of advice that we got, which is that if you have an idea and you really believe in it and you think it has legs, don't hope. Don't sit back and wait for someone else to do it so that you can put your finger and say, "Oh man, I had that idea." Go and do it. Go and actually do the legwork, like put the time in and create something, and like you have to actually physically go and make it happen. And that's the thing that we've said again and again, and we say it because it was the best piece of advice we ever got, and so we just repackage that advice and don't think of anything creative on our own.
That's the best answer I could have gotten. I like it. And now you said you had to focus and work hard on your model. Just go for it. Do you work your ass off? Do you work long days?
Yeah, everybody here does. I mean, it's really a culture of sort of a live hard, work hard, play hard, whatever, all those cliches. We're here. Everyone is super into sort of the vision, and I think we do a good job sharing the vision amongst. It's not just like an idea that I have or an idea that Adam has. It's like there's a culture here of everybody has ownership and feels like this is theirs in some capacity. And so as a result, people work really hard. We're still small enough that everyone's got that like passion. And so that's really what we ride.
That's awesome. And so you work long days, you have the passion. Well, what is it about running a business that gives you freedom? Like, well, what is it that really has you hooked?
Well, it's really that there is a big group of people sitting around me in this room who all have the passion. I mean, that's what's fun. It's like sitting in a meeting and having other people here who didn't start the company, fist pump when they see like a cool new email design, or like we break a sweet story, or there's a good press piece about us, or we roll out a new piece of technology. It's having a group of people in this office who are stoked about what we're creating. And that energy is what is, it's what sort of I live off of, and what I think I bring to the table is also good energy that other people can sort of soak up.
Okay, one last question. If anybody likes this publisher model out there and they're like, this sounds interesting to me, are there any other verticals, any other markets that you could recommend that might have opportunities to set up this type of model?
I actually think this type of model works in sort of any vertical you can think of if it's done right. I mean, again, this is the problem. If it's done right is like the big thing here, and there's so many. It's really easy to do this and screw it up. I mean, if the execution's right, I think that there are literally, you can do that. You can go and say, okay, cars, okay, automotive. And you can go and create a really cool, successful publication in the automotive vertical by reaching guys online and creating a newsletter, blah, blah. But the product's got to be awesome, not good, great. And the same, I mean, you can literally do it category by category. Pick up any major magazine that exists in print or has ever existed in print. That vertical can work if done online. Now, the opportunity might not be as big as like the guy opportunity that we've created or the girl opportunity that Daily Candy's created, but there's money to be made. There's a business to be had in any vertical if you do it right. And I mean, that's the beauty of publishing online, which is that the overhead costs are really low. And if you have a great product, you can reach a lot of people without spending a lot to get there.
Perfect. That's great parting advice. I appreciate that. Any last words for those people that are just starting out?
No.
Good. No. I like it. You laid it all out on the table.
No, just you know what? Just like, if you want to do it, you got to go do it. Like, you can't, even if you screw it up, I still think there's like real value in the experience of going and screwing it up. But I think that the worst thing you can do, particularly when you're young and you're, you don't have like a wife and kids to support, like, now's the time to go and like have the fun with it and like try and fail. I mean, we regularly get resumes here from people who have tried and failed, and they have on their resume, I started a business, blah, 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 and it didn't work out. And like, I don't ever look at that as a bad thing. That doesn't make me want to hire someone less. That makes me want to hire someone more, that they've got that kind of drive. So I think that it's not a step back in your career if you go and try and it doesn't work out.
Thanks for your time, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.